Welcome. I didn't have enough time to figure out the Facebook settings, but I have set it up so that there is a possibility of chat. So if you do feel inspired to write or say something, you can go for it. We'll see how it goes, playing it by ear. Just taking a moment to arrive. I know for me, I had a lot of busyness leading up to this moment. So even if you haven't, sometimes there can be stuff that's carried or subtle tensions in the body. And an opportunity to break that inner inertia, that momentum that's driving us forward. Where we're only partially here and already invested in a moment to come or an idea of what is to come. And if there is a lot of momentum, noticing the felt sense of that momentum, whether it be thought patterns that really want to persist, or contractions in the body, tightness, restlessness. None of this is a problem. This is all an invitation to pause, to come back home. And again, giving ourselves complete permission to be as we are. This is really a sacred space where nothing needs to be held back. So often it can be when we take time to pause is when we realize that we've actually been running from some emotion. We might not have even realized it until we stop and pause, and there it is. And so often, if this emotion appears, we think it's something wrong, that something needs to be fixed or something's off. And of course, all possibilities are open. It might be revealing something to us, but so often it's simply just wanting to be met, to be allowed to express. And as much as possible, allowing your attention to envelop your whole body. And it's such a subtlety, but not to try to extend your invitation, your attention. just allowing it with the invitation to open on its own. To become more inclusive. Not only is this place sacred in terms of allowing whatever wants to express to be expressed, but in terms of letting go of all of that effort, the subtle effort to try to make anything in particular happen. That subtle effort of even trying to meditate or trying to extend our attention. And if it becomes too much, too confusing with these pointers, to let go of all of it. Just don't even try to figure it out or understand, and just be. Just be here with us. I don't even need to understand if that's too much. You might notice in this sacred space, as we give so much permission for ourselves to be as we are, there might be this natural resting back, this natural softening in the body. But again, this isn't to paint an expectation that this is what should be happening. We just might notice that. It might also appear as more contraction, more tightness, wanting to hold on, and that's okay too. It doesn't necessarily feel as good or as open or spacious, but that's simply what's happening. And as much as possible, as best we can, letting go of that division between what we think should be happening or what we'd like to be happening and what is actually happening. Subside. Maybe the mind's busier than we'd like it to be, or the body's tenser than we'd like it to be, or think it should be. And we don't have to have it look like anything in particular either. So if you feel drawn to opening your eyes or just softening your gaze, even adjusting your position. that we can really just soften all these expectations around this idea of formal meditation having to be rigid. Not that there's not a benefit to having some sort of rigid practice at some point in our journey, but to not get attached to it needing to be any particular way. That even if we feel we need to move or adjust, to giving ourselves complete permission for all of that. Can or may potentially help us really relax into it, to not be so fixed or rigid or attached to certain expectations in terms of what meditation is or isn't, or what, again, our experience should or shouldn't be. To give ourselves complete permission to be as we are. Every tightness in our body, every contraction, every thought, just letting it be there. In our society, we're so conditioned to continually be on this journey of trying to change our thoughts, change ourselves, change our looks, change our status. It'd be revolutionary and amazing to realize that we can actually rest. So we give ourselves permission to just be here, not forever and ever, but as the moment reveals itself in this moment. Just by being in this space, we can give our even our body permission to let go more and more. And so we don't experience into something that's trying to get us, or we're not here doing this in this moment to have a future moment that will be better. It's simply to be here. It may or may not lead to conditions in the future that are maybe more calming or peaceful or open. But again, if that becomes our goal, then we're always removed from our experience as it is in each moment. Never fully available. Always imposing this subtle agenda on our experience. Subtly trying to mold or manipulate ourselves in some way to achieve something. which by default creates even just subtle contractions, if not intense contractions in the body. It's coming to each experience, each moment, this beginner's mind, not knowing how it should be or what it means or where it's taking us. Which might seem naive to the mind, but it can also be this open spaciousness that's quite beautiful. Quite freeing when we don't know how we should be, can open us to more fully being whatever is appearing. Without tying ourselves up into a pretzel or doing gymnastics to try to recreate ourselves into what we want ourselves to be or look like or get to or feel like. So just notice what it's like to be here with total permission to be as you are. To even be as restless as you are, as mind dominated as you are, as contracted as you are, as open and spacious as you are. Just notice what it's like to be in harmony with all of that. To not impose anything on your experience, that you should be paying more attention to your breath or your body, or to just allow your experience to be and roam as it will. We can come back and open our eyes. I'm just taking a moment to meet each other here. And again, just continuing to offer space for whatever wants to come. For me, I forgot my Kleenex box today, and it might be a messy talk. Can't seem to control, or the tears just keep flowing. And it's so interesting, even looking at tears. We can have these ideas of what they mean or what someone's going through when their tears are flowing, but do we really know? Sometimes it's just a release. It's our heart opening to the moment, letting go of whatever was, allowing, cleansing ourselves of all that was to allow ourselves to be here. We don't know. And we can get so scared when things like that start happening to us. I know for years I tried to hold it back. I felt like it was a sign of weakness and that was unprofessional, and I should appear a certain way, and I should be able to hold them back, control them. But there they were. I'd be with someone and the tears would start to flow. Noticing them project me that, hey, are you okay? And how so often we do that and project on the others when we're not okay with our own tears. And when someone else is crying with us, then we assume that they're not okay and we need to take care of them. Always assuring people that I was okay. Until eventually just came that finally an embracing of the nature of this body. But it's not like this for everyone, and it doesn't need to be your experience. But so often we get ashamed of these things, these emotional releases, instead of seeing the beauty in them. How it reveals how we're touched by life. When we're not experiencing our emotions, there's usually some sort of numbness or disconnect from life. But when our emotions are so raw and real, that it can be this indication of our openness and availability to life. That we can be so easily touched and moved by what happens. It doesn't necessarily need to be a sign of weakness or something to be overcome or fixed, or something wrong with us. And this isn't about flamboyantly acting out our emotions in inappropriate ways. So often, again, I think I've touched on this before, is that we can get confused that expressing our emotion means just acting out indifferently. And expressing our emotions isn't related to the behavior. So often they're linked. I'm angry, then anger looks like this, and it's all of these behaviors. And so if I'm expressing that, that means that it's okay for me to act out in this way. But the expression is really honoring that they're there, really admitting to yourself how you're feeling in the moment, whether it be frustration or anger, or pain or sadness. So often we don't even know how we're feeling. We're just kind of going around from thing to thing, acting out, doing this, doing that, all in our so-called regular habitual ways, oblivious to all the emotions that we're feeling throughout the day. And simply by being a human, we experience emotions, and they're constantly changing throughout a day. And it doesn't need to mean anything about us. This is just part of the human experience. To even pause and recognize what we're feeling can be a radical act of transformation. So we're not blindly moving from thing to thing, projecting all of these emotions onto other people that we haven't really acknowledged within ourselves. I know for me lately, and this is a vulnerable one to share, but there's been a lot of real deep sadness, real deep sadness, almost despair at some points in time. And just noticing that all playing out and how the mind is connected to it and the stories that are associated with it. And then the desire to go in and try to fix it and make it different. And yet at the same time feeling the exhaustion of all of that. Of continually, okay, this is how the emotional experience and then the pattern of going into trying to fix it and solve it and make it go away. And how all of that, it seems like it's good. And it does have a place. I'm not denying that. But that there can also be this element of suffering that's attached to trying to make it go away, trying to make it feel different, trying to change our thoughts, trying. And it's only for each of us to know. This isn't that we then collapse into this pool of despair and do nothing about it. There will be a movement within us, and to be able to trust that is so beautiful. And sometimes we're just asked to be in it for a while. This is my experience anyway. And again, I don't want you to assume that because what is my experience is necessarily your experience. But sometimes when we share our own personal stories, it can help us tap more deeply. If we listen to it not as this person out there having that experience that has nothing to do with me, but if we listen in a way that there's something being revealed in that, that's also for me. Sometimes we get so fixated because the story looks so personalized, and so the emotional experience are so personalized, and so we dismiss it and put it over there as that person's stuff. It has an element of myself in it. That there's always pieces that are reflected back, even if their story looks completely different and their emotional response is completely different. Maybe how they go about meeting that, or how they go about expressing that, or seeing the beauty of them embracing that, all can have an impact and be a teaching, being showing the way. So this is the beauty when we share our own personal stories, is we can help each other, show each other the way. This doesn't mean that my story is more right than your story or anyone else's story. but there can be bits that we take from each other. So just noticing within myself this desire to, this continual doubt that's always kind of played in the background of my experience, that it means something's wrong and I need to do something about it. And never really I never really exclude myself from that possibility. And that can be a beautiful pointer as well. That so often we think we know, but always kind of having our experience in this open lens of maybe I don't know. Maybe this is what's being asked of me, but if there's something that I need to see or change or do, to continue to hold that in this open space, that even that can be revealed. That maybe we're misconstruing what's happening or misperceiving what's happening, or maybe it just feels uncomfortable, so there's resistance, and I need to actually do something about this. It's my body, it's my system telling me to take action in some way. Or maybe it's revealing that now's the time to really slow down and really feel all of these deep, dark, often sometimes dark emotions that we don't want to feel. To allow them to come up to allow them to have space to be. So that we're not then fighting ourselves again as things get more intense and more dark. And so, as I've said so many times before, that there isn't really one way. There's never one way. What is asked of us is always so specific to the moment. In one moment, it might be asking us to sit with it, and another moment, it might be asking us to take action in a certain way or to set a boundary. This sounds personal, but it's not. But what I love so much about how the teaching flows through me is that it's not excluding anything, that everything is included. You know, those moments of deep, dark despair, those moments of bliss, the moments of transcendence where we're in this open spaciousness, where everything is just flowing through us, where nothing's personal, as well as being in this space where everything feels very personal. To be with the pain, no one else can guide us to, no one else can know what's right for us, because that inner wisdom is there guiding us. So in some moments it might seem like this is this very open, spacious being allowing everything to permeate, and in other moments it might seem very personalized. That it's about taking action and changing and feeling emotions and allowing them to come to the surface and be felt, and going into even the story behind them. In this way, I feel anyway that we become this whole, it becomes much more whole, much more embodied is the word so often used. We never disconnect then from anything. We stay rooted and connected to our humanity while also opening up to a much bigger picture than just ourselves as a small human being, separate and isolated from the whole. That we can see how we separate ourselves, even through it within our own human dynamic, that we separate ourselves from our emotional experience, that there's this emotion over here and there's me over here that needs to do something to change it or fix it or make it different. Again, that's another form of separation. That there's me over here that doesn't want this emotion, and there's me over here that is experiencing the emotion. Or we separate ourselves even through this group dynamic. There's me over here having this experience and you over here having that experience, not seeing how that they're really interconnected. That what's coming through me is as much for me as it is for you, and it's for this whole space. Or that the words that are being spoken are separate from the one that's speaking. That there's just this effortless movement that's moving through us, that's thinking our thoughts, that's speaking our words. It's how we separate from our experience in all these different ways. The parts that we don't like, we push over there. The parts that we do like, we hold on over here. We separate ourselves from others by giving them specific characteristics that they're this, they're that. So then it becomes easier to create this distance between us. There's people that we like and don't like. We categorize people, put labels around people. And as we do that, we don't realize how that creates so much of a distance between us and the other. Then we can't see that same spirit that's living us all. Even how we separate from our bodies, we become very mind dominated, thinking about what this body needs and trying to control and manipulate it. Again, another subtle form of how we separate from our experience. There's the mind that needs to then control the body, make the body be how it wants the body to be. Or we walk in nature and have a story about nature and nature being out there, rather than dropping into our being and seeing how we're really a part of this. All of this is appearing within us. It's a myriad of ways in which we separate. And as we begin to notice this, we notice the distance that this creates from our life. Notice how it shows up in our experiences, how it shows up in our interactions. That there's these others out there that might get something from me or take something from me or hurt me or take what I have or take my happiness. That was one that I used to sit with. I felt like I had these friends and things would go good for them, and then I would immediately feel jealous, envious. Like somehow it diminished me. I would want to be happy, but there was this part that was more envious and jealous than anything else. But somehow there was this irrational belief that there's only so much happiness in the world, and if others have it, then it wouldn't appear for me. That somehow it was a threat to my own happiness. So as we begin to become aware of these things, however it plays out for us, we can begin to really question them. Is that really true that there's only limited happiness? Is it really true that others are a threat to my well-being? Is it really true that my emotions are a threat to my well-being? ourselves. Even as if we go to war with any part of our experience, we automatically separate ourselves from it. And it doesn't mean that there won't still be preferences, but when we go to war with it, when we resist it, when we camp out in this idea that it should not be, or this should be, and we divide ourselves from what is. In some ways, too, it's really interesting doing these talks this last while, is that I feel, in some ways, too, it's really interesting doing these talks this last while, is that I feel that I really don't know. I don't know what this is or where this is going, or, sorry, what this is or where this is going. Or what is true. Kind of feels like I've been put into this like meat grinder and everything's kind of just there. Wanting to make sense of something that can't be made sense of, wanting to understand. Noticing when that feeling of something missing is coming up again. And noticing how sometimes that's bought into, that something's missing. Something needs to change, something needs to be different, that there's this something more that needs to be known or understood. Noticing what happens as soon as that thought is bought into. The grasping, the seeking, the chasing that then comes about. Not maybe as intense as it used to be, but in subtle ways. So just notice all of this. Really giving ourselves over in a way that can't be described. Letting go of that need to know. Need to know, need to have security, need to have it validated, needing to be anywhere, be anyone in particular. And noticing both the freedom that even those very ideas can evoke, but also noticing potentially the resistance to those ideas. Places that we still want to be something or become something or hold on or change our experience, or where we really don't think that it's okay or it really doesn't feel acceptable. And in some ways, this journey can feel very lonely. And I think that's part of where the despair has been coming up for me, is that no one can truly understand what it's like to be us, our experience. That for years I've gone This isn't a fault on them or a dismissal of using any of those services. For sure, it's not. But just a realization that only we can only truly know what's right for us. And that can be incredibly scary because sometimes it feels so confusing and there's these different parts of us that are kind of spinning around and it makes no sense. That's been my experience anyway. It can be so difficult to know which part to trust or which, just feeling that impetus within myself again to have someone give me the answer, to tell me what to do, to tell me where I might be off, or confirm for me that something's missing or something must be wrong with me. Again, because this is my life situation and this is what I'm feeling and looking for that. There must be something wrong because this is happening. And again, it very well could be a sign. And it's for us to trust that, but also for me in my own experience, what I feel is valuable to share is that sometimes it doesn't mean that anything is wrong. It's just all kinds of deep, dark stuff is coming to the surface and wanting to be seen and felt. And it doesn't mean anything is wrong. For years, I tried to overcome it and fix it. Oh, this is happening. This is my life situation. I got to fix it. So I would try harder than to find a job or try more counseling or try to get more exercise or change my body in some way or change. It was always I need to get more energy so then I'll be okay. I need to understand myself more, then I'll be okay. I need to understand this pattern within myself and then I'll be okay. Of course, none of that was conscious at the time. It was just like this belief that something is wrong. And it took time to really be able to trust in that, to trust that really nothing is being asked or nothing needs to be done. Again, I want to make it so clear that this does not mean that that's for you or your experience. But this is what happens as we go deeper within ourselves and we become more in touch with what's being asked of us. Because we are really the only one that can know, that have the sensitivity to know, okay, I'm being asked to stop. Stop all this chasing, stop all this fixing, and just feel whatever wants to come up. It might be scary, it might be painful, I might not know what it means or where it's taking me or how long it'll last. But if I do anything else, it just feels like too much. Or maybe we're not there yet. And so then we try some things, see if something's being asked of us, and then becoming more in tune with and sensitive to our own being. Did that feel like it opened me up in a way that led me to feel more open and spacious and free? Or was doing that something that made me feel more contracted, like this person that needs to control their life and try to fix and improve what's happening or what is. So just noticing that within ourselves as we begin to become more sensitive to our own experience and discern what's being asked of us. I got a little kitty here. That it can be scary with the thought that there's no one really that can save us and no one really that has the answer. But it can also be tremendously empowering. That there's this innate wisdom within us that knows what it needs. And for us to slow down and pause to be able to tap into that wisdom. then we can feel that sense of alignment and harmony with life, even when it's difficult. Even when it's painful. We can still be at peace. We can still feel a sense of harmony and alignment. Feeling like we're aligned with what wants to happen, what wants to express through us. We're not separate from it. We're not trying to control and manipulate it and make it into something. But there's still this ease with it, even though it can be extremely painful. And for going back to me and my personal experience, again, it's very noticing, feeling very much like there's been a call to embrace the darkness in this life. And it's not something that I would have chosen, not something that I want, but it feels very true. And so this is what we learn is sometimes we don't want to see these things. If we slow down and really let life reveal what is being asked of us, it might seem scary, all the darkness. I'm just going to be a pool of blood on the ground with nothing to look forward to, nothing. Life won't be worth living. But if we really let go of all of those projections and just be with the moment as it is, yes, there's darkness, but there's also a yes to the darkness, yes to the despair, yes to the pain, yes, that this is what wants to happen in this moment. Letting go of ideas that this is because if I feel it now, this is going to mean, I'm forever going to be feeling this. I'm forever going to be in the dark. I'm forever going to be experiencing pain. No, we don't know. We don't know what that means, what that will look like. So the invitation is always simply to be in alignment with what is. And even that, the sense that I'm being asked to embrace and welcome in the darkness, even that, I don't really know. It's just a subtle intuition. May or may not be true. But again, all it can really be known is in the moment, what we're feeling in the moment and whether we're aligned with it or not. So as we align more and more with our experience in the moment, that becomes so much easier to tap into the natural peace and rest and ease that's within us already, without us having to do something to achieve it. Well, I feel like I kind of muttered on there. I hope something was useful in there for you. Yeah, and I appreciate as well the opportunity for me to be vulnerable like this. It's not something that I've really expressed a whole lot, and it can be very shame-inducing too to express some of these things when there's a sense of it becoming personal, feeling like that these emotions shouldn't be here, that if there is this spaciousness that's opened up, if there is this at this point in the journey, all of these stories, that it shouldn't be like this anymore. It shouldn't be so dark. I shouldn't feel this darkness. I shouldn't, So to be very careful of all those shoulds and shouldn'ts, or any expectations that the journey should take you to a certain place or leave you feeling a certain way. And that can be the most scariest thing of all, is that when we surrender that desire to always feel good, to always be comfortable, to always get what we want. When we look at our lives, though, we don't always feel what we want. What we want to feel, we don't always get what we want. But yet, the idea in our minds is that if I let this go, then I will never get what I want. I will always feel these dark emotions. Will always all just really listening to all of the stories that we have of why we need to stay in control, why we can't let go. Because it's these stories that keep us bound in that cycle of continually seeking, continually trying to manipulate, continually trying to make our experience a certain way, which is exhausting. Exhausting. That we can be even in the greatest depths of despair or grief and resist it, or we could be in despair and grief and be in alignment with it. Really, our only option is whether we align with it or not. The emotions will come as they do. I'm sure most of us have experienced in our life that we can't control that. If we feel sad, we just feel sad. Sometimes we don't even know why. Or if we feel grief, we feel grief. We don't even necessarily know why. Or maybe we do know why, but we can't control it. It just comes. It just comes. Okay, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to end here, and I will be back on Wednesday. So take good care. Be very gentle with yourself, no matter where you are. I know I need this invitation for myself as well. So may we all have this gentle, loving compassion for ourselves and exactly where we are. Namaste.